People think they lack motivation because they're lazy. They lack motivation because they don't realize how far away from their ideal self they actually are. Learning is when you get new information and then you change your behavior based on that new information. But people think that learning is just getting information. But if you get information and you don't change your behavior, you've actually learned nothing. But if you listen to one podcast and it tells you to start eating 40 grams of protein at breakfast every day, and you start doing 40 grams of protein at breakfast the next day, and you keep that habit, that one episode was more valuable than 104 episodes that you didn't actually change your behavior from.
Welcome to the Doing the Work podcast. I am super excited about the guest I have on today. Adam Badger is someone who I had the pleasure of having a past conversation with on an educational panel, and he was just so smart and so helpful that I had to get him one-on-one again. So welcome to the show, Adam.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. And like I was telling you before we started recording, it's really flattering that I dropped some things on that group chat that were very off the top of my head that you found very useful. So hopefully I can live up to the hype.
Yeah, you are such a great educator. I know that like your business is, and we're going to dive into this a little bit, but your business is like online coaching, nutrition, fitness, mindset. But at the end of the day, you're a teacher, you're an educator, and you're just so good at that. And so you have so much value to people who may be listening to the show.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And it's we were talking a little bit before we started recording about, just the day-to-day stresses that come with being a business owner. And I'm also a father, I'm a husband, a homeowner. Like, so there's just, you get lost in the day-to-day, and you get, I'm sure you've been met with this too, and most of us have. You just get met with a lot of, hits, self-doubt, lack of confidence. I go through all those emotions like everyone else. So there's days where I'm like, I don't view myself in that light of like, oh man, I'm an educator and I'm helping people. I'm just lost in my own, stressors and self-limiting beliefs. And it's a daily work to doing the work. It's doing the work every day to get past those beliefs and not let them drastically affect your life. And some days I'm successful at that. Some days I'm not. But when I hop onto something like this and you say those things to me, like I just want to let you know that means a lot, and it doesn't just go in one ear and out the other. I'm like, oh wow, like that's cool that I come across that way to other professionals.
Yeah, how we see ourselves is so much different than how other people see us a lot of the time,
Yeah, man. Yeah, and because you see yourself in a certain way, and generally, I think for most people, myself included, is you're aware of your good qualities. You're more aware of the ones that you're not so much a fan of. And I think we, as like a defense mechanism, we are just expecting that people are only seeing the negative stuff.
Right.
Because if you convince yourself that, oh, this is what everyone sees, then it's not going to be as much of a blow if someone calls you out on it. So you start just like hyper aware of these perceived negatives. And then, and I see that with clients all the time. Like, clients will come to me and they're like, oh, I'm just lazy, I'm unmotivated, I'm like this, I'm that. And I'll look at their life and I'll tell them, like, you're a mom, you work 40 to 50 hours a week, you're raising multiple kids, you're getting them to all their sports on time, you're showing up at all their sports, dinner's always cooked, you're maintaining a marriage, you're maintaining a household. Like, don't tell me that you're lazy, because you're not.
Yeah.
Like you're not a lazy person. You just think, for some reason, you think you're lazy because you're having trouble, getting the motivation to work out. And that's one individual problem that we can solve. But if you have this identity that I'm a lazy person, then you're just going to keep showing up that way.
Yeah. There's one of my favorite books of all time is called Switch, How to Make Change When Change is Hard. And they talk about these 3 surprising things about change. And one of them is mm-hmm. what often looks like laziness is actually exhaustion. And that's what you just said, like, really reminded me of that.
Well, before we hopped on, you were saying how you're like, oh man, you're a beast. Like, you put out so much content. And my immediate response was, I feel like I'm not doing enough. I feel like, there's weeks where I'm like, oh man, I feel like I'm just being lazy. I'm like, I haven't put out enough content this week, or I didn't get a new client this week. And you're met with all that. And it took, my therapist said to me recently, just like, you don't have to have this whole thing figured out.
Yeah.
Because my daughter is 4 months old. So we're still only 4 months into having 2 kids. We went from 1 to 2 kids we're navigating parenthood and all this stuff. And she was like, you don't have to have it all figured out. And I was like, you know what? That's crazy, because I didn't even think about it, but my expectation was I should have this figured out in a week.
Yeah.
It's like I should have everything down pat, back to my routines, back to everything in a week. But setting that expectation kept setting me up for not only disappointment, but sometimes being too selfish and putting my routines and my structure and my work ahead of just being dad, and that's something that I've been working with, internally for myself.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat. I've started a type of therapy a couple of years ago, maybe it's been 2 or 3 years now, but it's called internal family systems. And it's essentially, we create segments of our personality and our character and how we talk to ourselves based on, experiences we had when we were kids, like usually prior to like 13 years old. And that voice that you mentioned earlier, like, that we all have like these internal dialogues and these internal voices are basically those small children that live inside of us that are, that have this experience. And like when you can, like what you said, you're doing the work to identify like that internal voice and figure out how you can heal that. Because I think what you said is like your therapist told you, and what's probably true is like, you don't have to have it all figured out. And in fact, you probably will never have it all figured out. It's not about a product that you're trying to get out of your life. It's about, engaging in the process that is lifelong. It'll never end.
Yeah, man. And that's the advice that I give to clients, is that like, they'll like, for example, I'm doing a group 6-week challenge right now. It just started yesterday. So I had, 37 people sign up for the 6-week program. And, day one, I have a group chat going, so people are very excited. They're like, oh, today went great, or today I was able to do this, but I wasn't able to do this, or today didn't go so hot. And I have to like always tell them, like, don't expect to figure this all out on like week one. Like this is I've been working out consistently for over like 20 years now, which is crazy. Yeah. And I still like have days where I'm like, how am I going to fit the workout in today? Or like, how do I condense this? Or, oh, my back was a little tight when I was doing that RDL. Like, I got to work on my form. I'm still figuring it out. But because when it comes to fitness, I've programmed my mind to understand that I will figure it out. Like it'll ever evolving. It's a non-negotiable. And I think people do that in a lot of areas of their life, but for some reason, a lot of folks have trouble when it comes to the fitness thing, getting their mind there, right? Like people have kids and they don't expect themselves to be perfect. They just know they've got the rest of their life to figure this parenting thing out. But when it comes to fitness, it's like if they don't figure it out in 4 weeks, they get discouraged and quit.
Yeah. And I've, being a coach myself, of course, I've bumped up against this with like hundreds of people, and one of the things that like really, I used to say, I have a 3-part purpose: optimal health, it used to be deep human connection, and self-actualization. And I've recently been wrestling with, again, it's an evolving process. And more lately, I've been saying it's about optimal habits, right? Like it's like what you do daily and what you do consistently is going to produce all the results that you want. And I think that people with fitness in particular, and especially because it's same thing. Most of the people I work with are parents, they're professionals, right? And fitness feels like such a selfish thing that to them it feels like, I'm doing this and it's only for me. And these are people who are loving, giving, supportive people of other people, and they have just such a hard time prioritizing themselves and seeing how that facilitates all the other amazing things they're doing in life.
Yeah, and actually, I've actually had some talks with clients about that specific topic recently, and I had a couple of nuggets that I felt were helpful and just a way to. I think that one of the reasons why the fitness area seems to be so difficult for people to get started with is because they've made the mistake of looking at it as this sort of like elective bonus, right? It's like, oh, a bonus would be to feel confident in my bathing suit. A bonus would be to lose 20 pounds. So it's like this they're not tying it into like what it really is
Yeah.
about, right? They're looking at it for like these like elective sort of bonus things. So it's not even like it's not even in terms of like they're thinking they're selfish for doing it. They're just like, oh, that's this like fun thing that I'll get to. If it happens, it happens. And they're missing the point, which is the feeling good in the bathing suit, the losing the 30 pounds, the being able to see, definition in your arms, all that stuff. That's not what you're chasing. What you're chasing is this, like what I break it down into is like improving your quality of life, extending or increasing your lifespan, and then it's improving your mental health, and then improving your physical health. And none of those things say anything about losing belly fat, right? Those are all like very important pillars you should probably be focusing on. And I also don't think that people have any trouble being selfish when it comes to things that are comforting, right? So, parents will say, I don't want to be selfish and spend 30 minutes working out, but they'll, stay up on Friday night and have a bottle of wine and be hungover the next morning and not engage with their kids. They'll work that extra 10 hours at work to get the project done, to get the career boost. If that means they're missing, softball games, they'll do those things. It's just there's like this missing piece. And I feel like if you or me or any coach could really figure out what that switch is and be able to replicate that over and over with minimal effort, you'd be a billionaire. But like, there's something when it comes to fitness that people are just like, I'll get to that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it a couple times when you were talking earlier, that I think people often focus too much on the symptoms of a healthy life, like you mentioned, the abs, the arms, the muscles, or whatever it is. And they completely miss the actual point. Like, that's just this byproduct of what's the most important is, like, you feel like you're on fire, and you know this, and I know this for myself and through coaching other people. Everything is better in your life, and you are better at everything else when you're just living a healthier life. Like, yes, it's nice. It's a luxury to have the abs, and it's a luxury to have the arms and everything. But the non-negotiable, like the word you used earlier, the non-negotiable is you are living an optimized, consistent, habitual life that pours gasoline on every other fire in your life.
Yeah, and I can honestly say that if someone told me that I wasn't going to get any visible physical benefits from working out, so I like, no matter how hard I worked out, my body wasn't going to change at all from the way it looks right now, I would still do it regularly because I just know how much better I feel when I do it. Right. So even if I like, you've seen this, man. If you've been working out for 20, 30 years, there's probably big chunks of time where you were working out consistently and you probably didn't see much change in your body. Yeah. People think that they're just always consistently forever getting better and better looking when they're working out. I've gone years sometimes where I feel like I don't look much different. Like, I don't think I look much different in 2024 than I did in 2017, right? And that's 7 years. But if I hadn't worked out, I would look way different, and not in a good way. And also, I would just not be in a good spot, man. So I know when I'm going through like a rough mental patch, when I just don't feel like working out. But even when I don't feel like working out, I'll still make myself do something because I just know how that snowballs.
Yes.
And that's the cycle people get into, right? It's like, I don't feel energetic, or I'm tired, so I'm not going to work out. But then you don't work out, so you feel less energetic and more tired, and then you don't work out again, and it builds this cycle. And man, I think for a lot of people, nutrition is going to be probably the most impactful thing they could work on in terms of like how, if they want to look better, it's like nutrition all the way. But if you could literally just exercise and not work on your nutrition, and you would still get all the health benefits of exercise. So even if you don't care, even if you come to me with some logic like, oh, I don't even care how I look, it's like, cool, you should still probably work out, because do you want to at least be healthier? Do you want a shot at living a longer life? Like, it doesn't need to be, you don't need to train for the Olympia. You just got to probably like lift some weights a couple times a week and go for some walks.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, it's not so much, like you said, I'm 47 years old. I've been working out at least 3 times a week since I was 14 years old, and sometimes
Yeah.
more than that. Since the age of about 21, I've pretty much looked exactly the same. Like, you know what I mean? My
Yeah, yeah.
genetics are what they are, and but when I haven't worked, I have also gone through longer periods of, you know, depression and all kinds of things where I
Yeah.
didn't work out, and those are the things that actually highlight for me more of the reason to work out, because it's not like so
Mhm.
much like you said, I'm not going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger ever in my life, but how I feel when I'm not doing that stuff is horrific. Like, I feel like absolute garbage, and I will do anything to not feel like that.
I think the crazy thing too is like you can get to that feeling of feeling like garbage even if you just dial it down too much. So it doesn't even have to be that like you're skipping it. It's like even if you just dial it back too much or you're slacking too much. So I think I think if you're listening to this and you're like struggling with motivation, and this was something I heard recently that at first I was like, it's one of those things where like you don't want to hear it and then you get like a little defensive right away, and then you think about it and you think, oh man, that's probably right. But it was basically saying if you're lacking motivation, it's because you think you're closer to it's basically what you're comparing yourself to. So if you're lacking motivation, people think they lack motivation because they're lazy. They lack motivation because they don't realize how far away from their ideal self they actually are.
Right.
So if you're comparing yourself, not you specifically, but if a person is comparing themselves to their parents, and their parents never exercised, ate crappy, maybe they weren't very emotionally regulated, they weren't, good communicators. You could be a crappy communicator who doesn't eat right, but maybe you own a Peloton, and you could be like, well, I'm still doing better than my parents. So like your motivation isn't going to be there to like really push it. But I think once you get to being in good shape, and I don't mean in good shape by like having a six pack, I mean when you feel really good, when you slip away from that, now you know how far away you are from that goal. So your motivation is higher. And when people think like about someone like me or you, like how do we stay motivated after for me, 20 something years, 30 something years of consistently working out, it's because I know how far away I can get from feeling good, and I know what it's like to feel good. So for me, if I get a bad night's sleep, the next day I'm immediately like, oh, I got to get a good night's sleep tonight because I don't feel great,
Yeah.
right? And whereas most people, they go years and years and years and years without getting a good night's sleep and without exercising, so they're just used to not feeling great. So again, there's no motivation there because they don't even know what the other side looks like.
Yeah.
Right? That it's hard to get motivated to do something that you don't can't even comprehend what that other side feels like.
Yeah. And I while you were talking, it also reminded me of something else, right? Like, your physical being, no matter how fit or unfit you are, really isn't, it doesn't matter that much in and of itself. What really matters is
Mm-hmm.
that this is your vehicle to living a life that you love, right? And for me, I'm always coaching people on finding purpose. Like, what is it that
Yeah.
you want to say? What meaning do you want your life to have? And there's like an infinite amount of things that you could choose there. But for me, what I found in terms of the motivation piece, right, is like, let's not get so locked in on how you look or even how you feel, because that's really that's great for you. But what's most important is, what are you using that for to contribute to the world? And like you mentioned, you're a father, you're a business owner,
Mm-hmm.
you probably have other things that you care about beyond just being, being a fitness coach. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's something I'm always trying to lock people into. And I'm curious your thoughts on that, like purpose, using your physicality for something beyond yourself.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. It actually got me thinking about my own approach to fitness sometimes, and uh, yeah, man, I think that's a really good way to put it. Is like, what what are you trying to get in shape for?
Right.
Like why are you going? And I tap into that with my clients a lot when I just did this I had a group call on Sunday, and I asked everyone to type in the chat, like, what's their goal with this, what's their overall goal? And people were typing in like very, I want to lose 30 pounds. I want to be healthier. So I started having them dig, well, why?
Yes.
Like, why do you want to be healthier? What do you want to use that for? Like, what are you going to be able to do that you can't do now if you're healthier? Like, and then when you get really, really deep with it, like, people are like, thinking, I want to be able to play with my kids. I want to be able to, get a promotion at work. Like, what are you using that for? And that's a good way to frame it. Like, what is this goal going to bring into your life? And sometimes, man, I think if you haven't made that connection, you can easily just like not get motivated to do it and fall off. And I think for other people sometimes, and I've been guilty of this, is if you don't make that connection, you end up sacrificing the things that you actually want for this other goal that you think you
yes
want, right? So like for me in the past, there was many times where I was so obsessive about what I ate or making sure I got my workouts in that I wasn't connecting the dots. It's like, well, why am I working out? Why am I eating healthy? So I can feel my best, so I can enjoy time with my, girlfriend at the time, now wife. But I would be not enjoying that time because if she wanted to do anything that was outside of my eating habits, I would be all stressed out about it, right? And now I honestly, man, I deal with that even with work, right? Like when people ask me like, what's the point of my business? My number one priority is like, oh, it provides for my family. Like I genuinely want to help people. I do. And I like what I do. But my main goal of my business is to provide a good service that allows me to provide a good life for my family and it allows me to show up. I'm showing up as a coach on this podcast for my clients. I want to be able to show up that way at home. And there's been many times, dude, where I haven't shown up at home because I was chasing this goal of a business and I was not making that connection. So you're turning on this, and I see people probably do this all the time, but like you're showing up for a podcast or a client call or a client appointment and you're putting on your best self. You're trying to be motivating, coaching, energetic, funny, and then you go home to the people that matter most and you're withdrawn, quiet, stressed, little short. And dude, like that was helpful to me to just remember to make that connection.
Yeah, and you've seen this too. And so one of my personal values is prioritize what matters. And like another way to say this, prioritize what really matters, and trying to keep things in focus, because you've seen this. I've been this way in my life where I've achieved an elite level of something. Maybe it's fitness, maybe it's business. And I was actually the least healthy and the least, I was the least engaged in what really mattered in my life because I had given so much to that one thing and forgot to prioritize what really matters.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And I've been there, man. And I think for a lot of people when it comes to their fitness goals, they're almost use the potential of obsession as a reason to not do it, right? They know of some stories of people who are so obsessed with fitness that it's like disordered. So then they'll be like, well, I don't want to be obsessed with fitness. So then they just don't do it at all, which is like the equivalent of saying, I don't want to be obsessed with work and then not having a job, right? It's like that doesn't solve it, doesn't help you. So I think building that connection and working on your daily habits and what you're actually focused on can help pull people out of that mindset prison that they live in, which is, well, I don't want to be obsessed with this, so then I'm not going to do it at all. You have to find that balance. But yeah, I can relate to that, man. I remember like the start of 2023. I was like, or start of 2023, 2022, I think it was. I was like not feeling great, not looking great, not being as consistent with my nutrition. And it was like the best like financial year in my business that I had ever had. And I was like the most miserable, the most withdrawn, the most out of shape I had been in a while. And it was because I was just obsessively chasing this goal and completely forgot like what even made me happy.
Yeah.
Like I just completely forgot about it. And that's when I started doing more of this deeper work. And that's when I started relating it to clients. And now, honestly, my constraint with my business is like you were kind enough to say, is that you feel like I am a good educator, and I'm very smart, and I can help people with this stuff. It's finding a way to get that message to more people, to connect with them and show them what I have to offer. Because we were talking about this too, is like, when it comes to fitness, it's almost like homework for a lot of
Right.
people. They don't want to hear about it,
Yeah.
right? So you have to find a fun, catchy way to package your messaging, but then you just become noise in this crowded market, and you have to figure out what your next step is. And yeah, dude, it's tough. And I see people struggle with that with their own fitness journeys, like, they have these big goals. They don't have an emotional attachment to the goal. They're overwhelmed with the amount of information they have. They don't know exactly where to start. So it's just becomes much easier to just do what you've always done.
Right. Yeah. And I think you talked about this way earlier in the conversation. I think people also think that, oh, I'm going to do this for like 4 weeks and I'm going to like fix everything.
Yeah.
And you and I both know that like what's really going to get you the best results in your life is what you do consistently. And in order to be consistent, you actually can't, like, it's like a car or even like a human being sprinting, right? Like you can go really, really fast and hard for a short amount of time. But if you put the
Yeah.
metal to the pedal to the metal in your car for too long, things are going to start flying off your vehicle. And same deal with your body. It's more like, okay, let's slow this down. Let's take the long view on this, and let's get to the distance. It's going to take us a lot more time to get there.
Yeah, and I think I empathize with people when they have that approach, because I think sometimes the messaging around it is like, oh, you're being impatient, you're an all or nothing person. And I think if you dig deeper on it, people are just they're in pain, and like emotional pain. And when they're trying to rush to results, it's not because they're impatient. It's because they're looking for some sense of safety.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, they truly believe that if I could just lose the 30 pounds in 4 weeks, which we know is almost physically impossible, but if I could lose this 30 pounds in 6 weeks, I will then feel more confident, feel more happy, feel more relaxed, and I won't be scared of gaining it back, and then I'll work on getting consistent. But I just need to get there first. And I empathize with that, because for a lot of people, they're just like so desperate to get out of the current pain that they'll jump into the deep end without knowing how to swim, and they'll just be flailing. They wait for someone to throw them a life jacket, pull them back out, and then once they catch their breath again, they're like, all right, I'm going to go try that again, as opposed to just slowing down and learning how to swim in the shallow end first, and learning how to swim, learning how to, breathe when you're doing it, all that stuff. So I think that's where it comes from. It's just this, they're trying to get out of a pain, like an area of pain that they're in, and they feel like they've found something that might pull them out. And again, dude, like, I say this stuff because I've done that in many areas of my life, where I was like, I'm in pain, I need a savior. And then you sign up for a business mentorship, or you sign up for this, or you hire this person, and you're like, this is the thing that's going to save me. And then you do that one too many times until you realize, oh, it's just, I got to just keep doing the basics.
Yeah.
Just keep doing the basics, stay consistent.
Yeah. And it's hard to believe that that's really going to get you, it's hard to sometimes believe, which is where a great coach comes in, right? Like, I feel like even as a coach, I have a coach. I feel like everybody needs a coach, because, that's where perspective comes from. That's where wisdom, maybe being a little more a grounded point of view, someone who's not as, like you mentioned, I'm in pain, and they're not as emotionally attached to your situation, so they can kind of take that, they can see it for what it is, and also with clarity say like, oh no, it's like, I know it's not this, it's this, and if you just work on this, you're gonna be in less pain. And sometimes you can't do that when, like you said, you're flailing in the deep end.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've had to work on as a coach is, I used to take on the responsibility of being that savior for each person. So I would become emotionally attached to their outcome, and not in like a drill sergeant sort of way, but I would just be like jumping through hoops trying to get, like, I don't understand, like, why can't I get Mrs. Jones, like, if she could just see, like, if she just did this thing, and I'm messaging them every day, and I'm trying to pull them out of the deep end, like, let me save you. And then you get the person who's just like not ready to be saved. And for me, that was causing a lot of stress as a coach, because I was taking on all of this emotional responsibility and trying to be responsible for each client's emotions and each client's outcome. And it takes confidence over years to just understand, hey, I know what I'm doing, and to have that calm, patient mindset, which again, it's just things you learn over the years as a coach. But that was one mistake, again, I used to make a lot, was I would just I remember being like up at night, like trying to wonder if this person, did they get the message I sent them, or did they go off the rails, like freaking out, like are they gonna, are they getting results? And then that same person would be the one who like quits out of nowhere.
Right.
And it was taking energy away from the clients who, because then what happens is the clients who are the ones who are actually doing the work and are very consistent, they're not getting the best of you, because you're like, oh, you're good, I gotta save this person.
Right.
Where it should be the opposite. It should be the person who is the most accountable and is doing the work. They should probably get the bulk of your attention. I think for a lot of people, they are, and I don't say this in like a mean way, but a lot of people just they fall into like that victim mindset too often or too easily, and they're waiting for someone to come save them. And realistically, it's not like it's not you in a burning building and a fireman coming to drag you out because you're trapped under something. Like, that's not how it works. It's more like like a tow truck coming to get you, and it brings you to the shop, and then the shop helps you fix the problem, but then you still got to drive the car responsibly afterwards. Like, you have to do some of the
Right.
work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I see this all the time, younger coaches, younger trainers. And I was like this, and it took me a long time to kind of break out of it. It's like this, it's this ego high that you get when you do help someone, or when someone says, wow, you like, some people say, you saved my life. You'll get that kind of feedback. You'll see them get these like make this major progress in whatever metric of health or fitness, right? And it's this ego high, and then I know I did this. It was like, it was all about me, right? Like, I'm saying I'm trying to help you, but really what I want is for you to get the results, so I feel great about myself. And
Dude,
I made that mistake.
I don't think enough coaches don't admit that, and I think that's probably true for a lot of coaches that probably aren't willing to be that, like, do that self-assessment, because I've definitely been guilty of that too. And also too, I mean, no one wants to talk about this either, but it's true. It's like your livelihood is based on your clients as well. Like, so there's this relationship of like, well, I want to make sure you're getting good results, because then also you'll hopefully stay a client longer, right? It's like, it's not like you're trying to trap them into a thing. It's just like, oh, well, I want to make sure I'm doing the best possible job so that you want to stay a client. And there is that relationship. So it can create unnecessary stress in that relationship. There has to be like clear communication around, listen, I'm the coach, these are my responsibilities, you're the client, these are your responsibilities. And if one of us isn't upholding our end, then we should be able to have open communication and talk about it, right? As opposed to, dude, it's funny that you say that, because like I totally relate to that, because you're getting like that ego high. Do you feel like that was something that you've gotten better at over the years? Do you catch yourself falling into that now?
I relapse all the time. I'm much better about it now than I ever have been. But really, it took me crashing and burning a lot. I think that, like I mentioned, I would fall into a depression because I was giving so much, and like it was focused on the wrong things. I wasn't prioritizing what really mattered, and I was making it all about me. Knowing what I know about my childhood now, I was an only child. My parents weren't present. I was just screaming for attention. Like, look at me, I'm important. Look at me, I have value. I'm worthy, right? And that carried into my adulthood for some years. Until I kind of figured out, like, wait, just because my circumstances of my childhood were what they were, it didn't mean that I wasn't lovable or had value or was important in any way. It just, you know, I didn't feel that way at that time. But when I finally crashed and burned and had enough problems in life, I realized that, look, I don't need to make everything about me. I don't need to be standing on the platform and showing everybody like all these cool tricks that I can do, right? And
dude, that's really it. That's like, I can relate to that so much.
yeah.
So much.
Yeah. So, and I think a
Yeah.
lot of coaches, I mean, they're good people with big hearts and they have this skill set based on like, probably the harder parts of life. They've developed these skills and abilities. And I think there's a lot of coaches who get into the work for that reason. And then sometimes they burn out of the field because they haven't done enough work on themselves to kind of stay in it and see what really matters.
I think also too is that there are probably equal amount of coaches who don't have that approach and are just like, hey, I look good in workout clothes, so I'm going to start. And then, but what happens, and I'm not trying to act like a victim here. I'm just saying this kind of what happens is like, those are the ones that will get the rocket boost, right? Those are the ones who will get the million followers and start making all this money, and like they don't ever have to actually be in the trenches dealing with the day-to-day stuff that comes with helping humans. So then there's coaches like us or maybe newer coaches who they're like, I don't understand. I feel like I'm trying so hard to genuinely help people, and like it's taking, it's hard to build a living out of it, and it's stressful. And I think that's why people burn out too. And it took me until my adulthood to really dig into it too, my childhood. But like my childhood too, as I was one of three boys. I was the oldest. But I kind of went through all of my school years just kind of, I was just like someone in the background. I wasn't a popular kid. I didn't have a ton of friends. I didn't go on one date all through fucking school.
Wow.
There was a big chunk of my childhood, primarily a lot before I hit the age of 13, which, like you said before, like before you hit 13 is, my dad had a addiction issue when I was a kid. So there was a lot of periods of time where he wasn't around, and I had that internal wiring of, why is no one looking at me? So I felt I have to be overly exceptional at everything in order to just gain like a shred of acceptance and love. So like and then it made a lot of the things in my life unintentionally transactional. So if I was showing up as like the man of the girl's dreams, it was because I was just hoping that I was going to get that love in return. If I was the funniest guy in a group of friends, it was because I just needed to feel like people wanted me around. So it's probably got pros and cons to it, but there's a point where you get burnt out because you are pouring out so much. And the thing that the people don't talk about enough is, once you get the love and acceptance from the people that you want it from, it doesn't register.
No.
Because then you're like, oh, I got that, but now that's baseline. I need more.
Yeah, I have to do something
right?
bigger
So
and
like,
better now.
Bigger and better, yeah. So like I have, I'm married to my beautiful wife, coolest, funniest, most, prettiest girl. We have two beautiful kids, and my inner child doesn't think I deserve that, but knows that they love me. So then on a day-to-day basis, I'm not like, how can I impress them? My internal wiring is, how can I get external appreciation from other coaches, clients, like whatever. And again, dude, it's like that internal wiring is crazy, that once you're aware of it, a lot of people just live in the dark on this stuff. They don't do this self-assessment. When you do the work and you learn this stuff, you're like, damn, man, like I really got to work through that.
Yeah, it's an addiction. that attention seeking, people pleasing behavior of other people.
Yeah.
It's really an addiction, and it's deeply unsatisfying because, like you said, you're going to keep going more and more. I mean, my whole military career was about that. I joined the Army right out of high school, and it was like, what can I do to show everyone else how special I am? So I would I would
Yeah.
get into this special unit, and I would be like, to me, it was just I would get there thinking everyone was going to sing my praises, and some people would, but then it was just like unsatisfying. So it's like, okay, well, maybe if I go to this school that is like highly regarded, and graduated, then I will feel accomplished and special and loved. And it just thing after thing after thing that is always deeply unsatisfying, and it never hits the mark. And I just get higher and higher off of
Yeah.
the praise, even when I do get the praise, so.
Well, the funny thing too is that it's because it's subconscious too. You're not pursuing it thinking, like consciously thinking, oh, I'm doing this to get love and acceptance.
Oh.
You just feel like an internal pull towards
Yeah.
it, right?
Completely
So
unaware.
It's almost like unaware and almost like what's the word I'm looking for? Involuntary. It's like almost like an involuntary response. Dude, I mean, look, even us, like we met and you invited me to do a group call with your people, and there was me and two other coaches on there. And even that, like in the moment, like you were saying that you were really like the things I'm saying, but like that all stemmed from that inner child of like, I'm on here with three other coaches. I have to make sure I have my A game on to gain some sort of acceptance here. Now, but again, like it doesn't always manifest negatively. Like that was a positive thing. Like I hopefully helped people when I shared stuff, but it was coming from that lack of confidence that I deserve to be on this call.
Yeah.
Right. So it leads to good performance in some areas, but you have to learn to fill your own cup and love yourself enough to realize that, hey, even if you showed up as just your authentic self and you didn't kill it, that you're still worthy of love and acceptance.
Yeah. And I think that's the hard part, is because, like you said, yeah, I've achieved a lot in my life from this like really like hurt child place.
Yeah.
It's helped me with a lot of things. And that's why it's hard to like go get away from it, right? Like same thing, like you mentioned, people with other types of habits, like whether it be their eating habits or drinking or anything else. Like I kept doing it because I was getting something out of it.
Yeah, and you might be getting comfort. Yeah, you have to figure out what you're seeking. Like you said, like you were seeking love and acceptance. I was seeking love and acceptance or attention. Some people are seeking stability. Some people are seeking security. Some people are seeking comfort. So once you can acknowledge, like, well, why do I keep running back to like these old eating habits? There's a feeling that's attached to them that you're not quite aware of. So when you were a kid and, maybe things were erratic or stressful in the house, but hey, every Friday you guys had pizza night, and that was where like people seemed to be relaxed and be a little bit more chill. Then you're gonna develop this subconscious association with highly palatable foods that brings you a sense of comfort. And dude, like I do that. My whole life I didn't even realize that I had like a very emotional, comforting relationship with food. And it's taken me into my early 30s to go to really address that and start to realize that. And now again, luckily I wasn't someone who struggled with like binge eating or eating disorders. So, but I definitely I think everyone has a little bit of a comfort relationship with food, right? Everyone has these certain foods or certain meals that makes them feel like comfortable and safe. It's learning how to not, tap that vein every time you're stressed out, right?
Yeah.
So if every time you're stressed out, whatever you do to auto-regulate that stress, that's usually attached to the feeling that you're chasing, and that's the thing you need to work on. So for me, a lot of times when I'm feeling high anxiety, my go-to is to try to do something like work-related, right? And it's because when I'm doing that, I feel like my hand is on the wheel, right? I feel like, okay, I'm in control. I don't know where this is going to lead, but I know I'm at least doing something that's like moving me forward. So my one thing is that I've learned over the years is that I have a high functioning anxious personality and my addiction is doing things like I have like workaholism, right? Like I get addicted to that. which, by the way, is like one of the most dangerous addictions you can have, because it's literally the only addiction that people praise.
Right.
Right? No one goes, "Oh my God, I admire you so much that you can drink so much alcohol."
Yeah.
Right? They go, "No, I admire your work ethic. Oh, you put out so much content, or like you're able to do these things." So your addiction is also enabling your inner child's need for praise and attention. So that was probably with you too, is for me, is like, I want this praise and attention. Oh, when I'm working hard at things, people give me praise and attention. Now my identity is I have a good work ethic and I'm a hard worker, and I'm willing to, like, allow happiness and joy to filter out of my life to just hold on to this identity.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that working through therapy that I got to too, is like, oh, you don't really derive a lot of joy from your life. And I was like, well, yeah, like that makes sense, because I'm so obsessed with getting the attention for being like the hardest worker.
Yes.
That it's hard for me to just relax and just be like goofy and like and have joy in my life.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's like when it's coming from a negative place inside of you, which no one else can see, but it is what society and most people consider to be a positive thing. Fitness can be that way. I've worked with a lot of people over the years
Yep.
who had extreme unhealthy habits with fitness and exercise. And in most cases, that's a thing that people praise. It's like, oh, you're so fit, you're so committed to your habits and so many things, and and you look great or whatever,
Yeah.
But it can be an extremely negative and unhealthy thing for some people.
Dude, I've literally seen like people who like would post a picture of themselves and they're really in shape online, right? And they'd get all these comments like, oh, hashtag goals, like, oh my God, you're amazing, can't believe you're so dedicated. I wish I had that level of motivation. And like this person had cheated on their spouse, barely sees their kids anymore, is not in a good financial situation, is totally a mental mess. But people are like, your goals. I want to be like you, right? Because you're fit. And it's the same thing with money, right? How many people out there are wildly financially successful, so people look up to them and they're ignoring the fact that they've burned all these bridges in their life, or I've gotten into that lately, because as a kid, like growing up as like a male, you just start looking up to like, you start and search for like that maybe that father figure, that like you're trying to look for, what am I supposed to be as a man? And most of the men in society who are built up, it's going to be people who are like very, very successful athletes, movie stars, businessmen. And you start to just look at, okay, I have to mimic their habits. What are their habits? What are their habits? And there's no parade for the guy who makes a modest income, provides for his family, invests smartly, lives a low-key life, and there's no reward for that. There's no parade.
Yeah.
So as a kid, when you're searching for a father figure, you're not looking at Mr. Jones down the block, who's just a good father and an everyday stand-up guy. You're looking at like, trying to think of an example, but like there's no shortage of examples of like movie stars, musicians, or athletes who are wildly successful, but beat up their wife, or are on their or like don't see their kids. But it's like, that's okay as long as you achieve this big thing. So again, it's just it's fine tuning that hardwiring for guys like us who maybe didn't naturally have the confidence to say, I'm good with where I'm at, right? We're just always chasing that more.
Yeah.
And just so people listening to this, we're doing the work on ourselves. We're not just like this fucked up all the time. We're being honest.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really important, even as a coach, right? Like I think it's really important for people to there's a humanizing effect, and like you mentioned, like there are some coaches out there are going to, all different types of coaches that are going to help people, and they're going to say like, they're going to act like they do everything right, and they're going to put on this facade like they do all these, do what I do because this is like what's perfect or whatever, but they won't be honest about like their pain or the humanizing effect of it. And then like my favorite coaches, like coaches that coached me in sports as a kid, or even some of my leaders in the military, or coaches I've had over the years, they're just like honest, like, and they're like, look, I'm going to help. I've had all these problems, and I'm going to help you not to have those same problems. Maybe you'll just be a little better than me. And those are the ones I've connected with the most.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, 100%. And that's honestly what's gotten me to build solid relationships with a lot of my clients, is just being open with them, being like, hey, listen, like I think a lot of people are looking for, that that this person who has all the answers, right? And sometimes you just need someone who's maybe like a quarter mile ahead of you on the trail and just looks back at you and goes, hey, it's okay to go this way.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you don't necessarily need someone who's been to the mountaintop and come back down and is now pulling you up. It could be someone who's getting to the mountaintop with you, but maybe they're just like a quarter mile ahead of you, and they can tell you what to look out for next.
Yeah, or someone who just has a talent, and like maybe I don't have the answers. There's a lot of times as a coach, I don't actually have the answer to your problem, but what I am really good at is most of the time I'm a huge believer that you have a ton of wisdom within you, right? And my talent is just to pull your own wisdom out, right? Like, you know what you need to do. I don't need to tell you a lot of the time. I don't need to tell you, especially in the realm of like fitness, nutrition, even mindset, right? Like most of the time, you're just not doing it. I need to pull it out of you and help you to be accountable to doing what you said you were going to do,
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it.
How many times do you hear that too, right? It's like, I know what to do, I'm just not doing it.
Yeah.
Like that's the phrase a lot of people come back to. And that's why information isn't the solution, right? It's not about getting more. And that's another thing that I've been working on too with myself, is to just stop overly consuming information.
Yeah.
Right? Because now it's so accessible, man. I used to like pride myself on how many podcasts I listened to a week and how many things I read a week. And a piece of knowledge that was dropped on me, over the last few months, that again I've been using with my clients, is that learning is when you get new information and then you change your behavior based on that new information.
Right.
But people think that learning is just getting information. But if you get information and you don't change your behavior, you've actually learned nothing.
Right.
So
you wasted your time, basically.
Yeah, or you're just entertaining yourself,
Yeah.
right? So if you listen to 2 nutrition podcasts a week for a year, you listen to 104 episodes of a nutrition podcast, but you've never actually changed your eating habits. You actually learn nothing.
Yeah.
Right? But if you listen to one podcast and it tells you to start eating 40 grams of protein at breakfast every day, and you start doing 40 grams of protein at breakfast the next day, and you keep that habit, that one episode was more valuable than 104 episodes that you didn't actually change your behavior from.
So correct.
So same thing with this. When you're listening to us talk, if you're listening to us and you go, oh, I noticed that I tend to turn to wine or I turn to food when I'm stressed out, and then you start to acknowledge that and change your behavior around that, this one podcast was now more valuable to you, you learn more from, than if you listen to 100 other ones but you didn't change your behavior. So if you're someone, if you're looking for like a takeaway, one thing that I tell my clients to do is like a 3-question reroute. It's like a mindset reroute. So if you catch yourself in like repeating in a pattern that you don't want, so like you get stressed out, so then you're driving to the liquor store to get a bottle of wine, or you're going to the drive-thru, just stop for a second. Ask yourself, what am I feeling, right? Like, what is the emotion that I'm feeling right now? Allow yourself to feel that, though. Like don't just be like, oh, I'm pissed off, and just move on. It's like, no. I always tell clients, like, if you got a punch pillow, or you got to like blast some hard rock or some Slipknot or something, get that, and like let yourself feel that emotion. Then dig it. Then ask yourself, why am I feeling it? Because generally, like we talked about, it's not because it's not because your boss made a condescending comment. That's not why you're pissed off. You're pissed off because he made the condescending comment, and then that triggered your lack of self-worth. Mm-hmm. So okay, I know why. And then the third question is, what is one productive or positive thing I could do now to move me closer to how I want to feel?
Yes.
And if you do that, it can take 3 minutes to do that. But the answer is probably not going to be, oh, I should still go get that bottle of wine, or I should still go get that takeout, right? It's going to be, maybe I should go home, cook a meal, and see how I feel afterwards, or go for a walk. Maybe I should, I was going to go to the gym. I was going to skip the gym today. Maybe I'll go do that workout.
Yeah, and what you're saying is really, it's about that level of awareness, right? Like, I think that like what resolves a lot of issues in life is just like being aware, like paying attention, observing what's going on, like really taking a second to kind of see what's really going on, being aware of it, and then you'll make better decisions. And like, again, this podcast is called Doing the Work. One of my values is do the work, because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. It's that, what is that positive action that I'm doing to get me towards something bigger in life, or to get me to this goal in life. So it's about the action, not the thoughts. Don't matter. I always say this all the time. Thinking, we've got this like racing all the time. We just have thoughts going all the time. None of that even matters. Like, but
Yeah.
what really matters is the action that you take, either positively or negatively as a result.
Yeah, dude. I tell that to my clients all the time, man. Is just start doing things. Like, just start doing it. If you hear you should eat more protein, just start trying to eat more protein.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry about what's the best protein sources, how much. Just start trying, and then you'll get information from that, which is, how do you feel? Are you feeling more bloated, or is it easy? Is it difficult? And then you can work on that or ask questions about it. But if you get a piece of information, and I do this all the time, we all do, and you just start immediately, you get one marching order, and you have 10 questions about that marching order, you're overthinking.
Yeah.
Just go do the thing and see what
Yeah.
happens.
And then study the results. Did it work? Did it not work?
Yeah.
Where can I do better? And you just keep moving forward that way.
Yeah.
Well, listen, that's about all the time we had for today. Tell everyone where they can get a hold of you. Again, you're a great educator. You're a great coach. I mean, anyone who listens to this podcast knows that you have value and something to offer. Let people know where they can find you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Badger Strength on Instagram is probably the best spot to go. There's links there to all my other stuff. I also have a podcast called Talk and Fit, which is mostly, fitness, nutrition, mindset stuff. And if you go to either of those things, there's probably a link there for some sort of free resource for you. Like if you're struggling with getting your weekends on track, if you're struggling with self-sabotage, you're struggling with meal prepping, you're struggling with having enough time to work out, I have free resources for all those things. And so you can feel free to download those and get started. And like we talked about, take a piece of information, change your behavior, take action on that, and then see what happens.
I love it, man. Well, I have learned from you. You have given to me with your time and what your experience and everything. So I'm just deeply appreciative of you taking the time to be on the show today, man. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so appreciative of you having me, man. This was great. I had a great time.
We'll do it again sometime.